Hey everybody, welcome to another M365.video SharePoint short. This is David Warner. Today we're going to talk about no-code PnP contributions. Now, if you're not familiar with PnP, it stands for Patterns and Practices, and it's a global community of SharePoint technologists and advocates that contribute in the form of code samples and blogs, videos, tutorials, and more in an open source arena. Now, this helps create an increased value to SharePoint and the entire Office 365 ecosystem. But oftentimes there's a misconception that to make a contribution, you have to be writing code, provide a sample in the form of some sort of SharePoint framework solution or something similar. Simply not true. There is a huge amount of contribution that can be made without writing any code. So today we're going to take a look at some opportunities available. It's not going to require a single development editor. You won't have to write a single line of code. No curly braces required whatsoever. We're going to look at what opportunities you can take advantage of today. Then we're going to see a live demo. I'm actually going to make an update to a Microsoft documentation on the web and submit a pull request. We'll walk you through every step of the way so that you can feel comfortable and confident making no-code contributions. So what kind of no-code PnP contributions can be made? One significant category is documentation. Now what's even cooler is we're talking about the official Microsoft documentation found at docs.microsoft.com. And you and I have the opportunity to help make it better for the benefit of the entire community. We can help out by making spelling and grammar corrections. Perhaps there's updated features and or guidance that needs to be identified within some of the documentation, or perhaps it needs an improved explanation. Now, some may look at these contributions as simplistic, not a lot of value. That's simply not true. There is so much value included in these subtopics and this category alone, and all of us have an opportunity to help out the entire community by providing these sorts of contributions. And what's even more awesome is the only requirement is a GitHub account. You won't need a code editor, you won't need to write a single line of code. All you need is a GitHub account. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So let's set the stage for our live demo. We'll start by looking at a piece of documentation found in docs.microsoft.com that could use a documentation update. Then I'm going to show you how to edit the documentation using GitHub in a browser. And then we're going to submit what's called a pull request. Now this is essentially a request being sent over to Microsoft through GitHub that shows the edit that we made and is requesting for the GitHub administrators within Microsoft to approve our edit and make it live for the entire world. Here we are on a docs.microsoft.com page where I found some grammar corrections need to be made. This happens to be on dynamic loading of packages in SharePoint Framework, but the change we need to make has nothing to do with the technology. It's simply a grammar update that needs to be made that I had found. Let's start out by looking at the change that needs to be updated. I'm going to go ahead and do a search on the page because I already know the strings that I'm looking for, and I'm just going to go ahead and enter. We found the change that we want to make. It's about halfway down the page in the loading third-party components dynamically section. And when you read that first sentence of the paragraph, it doesn't sound quite right. It says, when a SharePoint Framework project is packaged up, it is using Webpack behind the scenes to create the bundles. It's pretty obvious that there's a duplicate in the word it. No problem, imperfect humans are writing this documentation and mistakes are made. But what's awesome is we now have the opportunity to help improve it. So we want to change it to say, when a SharePoint Framework project is packaged up, it is using Webpack behind the scenes to create the bundles. We simply want to request to remove that first it. The way that we make that change and then submit a request to have this documentation officially updated is very simple. We'll start by closing our search, and we'll go ahead and scroll to the top of our page. And we want to look for the edit button. We see right here, there's an edit button that says edit this document. When we click this edit button, it's going to take us over to GitHub and give us an opportunity to edit this page. Now, as I mentioned, that is the one requirement. You want to make sure you've already created a GitHub account, or you'll have to create one. Now, I've already created one, so when we go over to GitHub by clicking on this link, it's going to take me to my GitHub account where I've already been logged in. It's beneficial if you are already logged in too if you're going to make any changes. We'll go ahead and click edit, which will then take us over to GitHub. And we can see I'm already logged in, I've already got an account, and I've been logged in. Now, because I'm already logged in, we can see here in the header of the documentation is an edit button that's available for me to click on. If I weren't logged in, then this would be grayed out. Now it tells us edit the file in your fork of this project. Simply what that means is that this is the official location here in SharePoint that the documentation lives. We need to make a copy of it. Forking it is essentially making a copy of it, which will copy it over into my GitHub account so that I can make edits until I see fit to make a request to Microsoft to update the official documentation. So we'll go ahead and select the edit button, which will give us an editable version of this documentation. Now we already know what it is that we want to change, so we'll go ahead and click inside of the documentation and we'll just do a Control F to search. We know it's it, and we hit enter, and that takes us right down to here where we can make the change. So we can actually go ahead and edit that. I'm going to go ahead and delete it, simple change, and that's all there is to it. Then when we go ahead and scroll down to the bottom, we see that there's some information that we need to fill in. The information that we should look to provide here is just a little information around what it is that we changed within this documentation. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the first. This is where we should keep it fairly short and succinct. We just made a grammar correction for this dynamic loading piece of documentation. Now in this optional extended description section, we can add additional information if we would like. So we'll just go ahead and paste in some additional documentation. Now that we've made the changes to the documentation and we've provided the information needed to propose the file change, we can go ahead and select the Propose File Change button. When we select that, we see that it takes us to a comparison page within GitHub. Now there's a lot of things going on this page, but don't let it overwhelm you. As we had mentioned previously, when we make edits to this documentation through the GitHub interface in the browser, it makes a copy of it inside of our GitHub account. This section right here is simply saying that we're wanting to make a request from our GitHub account and request for it to be updated in the SharePoint GitHub account, and that it's letting us know that they're able to be merged. The next section shows the changes that were made as part of this request, including myself, the user who made the change, as well as the information that we had provided when we saved the file. It also shows the changes to which files. So we see it's one addition and one deletion, and it shows the details down here of the changes actually made. So we can see it's showing we removed the it, and it shows the change over here on the right that it is now removed. Now that we have reviewed and feel comfortable with the changes made, we can submit what's called a pull request. This is simply a formal request through GitHub to the administrators of this Microsoft documentation to take the edits that we have made and update the version found at docs.microsoft.com. To begin that formal request, we'll simply click on the Create Pull Request button. Once we select this button, we're presented with one more opportunity to provide additional information about the changes we made. Now Microsoft is requesting us to provide a little more information here that helps them understand what kind of changes we made. Because this is a content fix, we'll go ahead and insert an X into the content fix box that they're looking for. Now there's some additional information down here that we could include, sometimes required for more robust samples. But because we're just simply updating some grammar, it's already carried forward the original documentation we provided where we said we removed the duplicate it words in the documentation. So we can go ahead and look at our preview. We can see that it now shows a checkbox next to the content fix. So we'll go ahead and go back to the right section, and we can see that a lot of this other stuff is being requested to delete before we submit this and after we're reading. So we'll just go ahead and click here, select all of that and hit delete. And we'll go ahead and delete this as well. And it just provides them a simple explanation of what it is that we're looking to have achieved with this pull request. So before we submit it, we'll take one last look at the preview. This is again a very simple example of a change being made to a grammar update. If this had been more in-depth updates to the documentation around features, or perhaps we changed a code sample within the documentation, we definitely want to include as much information as possible as to the reason why we are requesting the change, so that the administrators that are approving this change can understand the reasoning behind the requests that we're making. Now that we've reviewed our changes and provided the formal description of the changes being made in this pull request, it's time to submit. Let's go ahead and do that by selecting the Create Pull Request button. Once this page updates, we can see that we've been officially assigned a pull request ID number. We see our official request to have opened it, including our description of the changes made. There's a number of automated tasks that GitHub goes through. But we can see the official request if we go ahead and select on pull requests. We'll open that in a new tab, and we can see that here's the request we made. It was opened by myself. It shows the information that we wanted to change, and it's ready to be merged into the official version of the documentation. At this point, our job is done. We've made the official pull request, and we just simply wait for the administrator of this repository to come in and either accept our changes or maybe send a message back to us if they have any questions about the changes we made. But we can always keep track of it by going to the pull requests link here in the menu bar. I'm going to go ahead and open that in a new tab. And this is the pull requests for my account. So at this point, it's the only pull request I've made. It shows everything that I've made that's currently open and waiting to be accepted. Thanks for watching the video today. I hope this has been helpful in providing you information and confidence in how you can contribute to the PnP community without having to write a single line of code. Here's some useful links that will familiarize you a little bit more with the PnP community, as well as some links to GitHub Learning Lab and helpful resources. Thanks again for watching.